Spoiler alert from Mushoku Tensai Volume 20. If you haven't read it, then I suggest you do so before continuing on to this video. After his failure in Shirone, Rudeus now has to work extra hard to fix the mistake he made. But little does he know, it might require the help of another friend. Hello everybody, this is the Anime Bro here, and welcome to another video. And I'll be reviewing Mushoku Tensai Volume 20. Now before this video starts, please like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this, and come back next time as I talk about Volume 21. And now, let's begin the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is the story. Now Volume 20 isn't really that bad, but it's also not really that special either. It does have its moment, like at the very end. All in all, nothing really special happened. We get some Cliff moments, we get some Rudeus moments, we even get a Zenith moment, but really, all in all, it's not really something special. This volume does have like a satisfying ending for Zanobo. He's now working for Rudeus and doing the thing he loves, which is creating figurines. So, you know, he's doing that, and Zanobo's got a happy ending with Julia and Ginger. So, you know, we got some closure for that. But then it starts with like Cliff and stuff, and I thought this thing was going to be all about Cliff. But then we get so many different like time skips and stuff. And we also get like many different moments all in general. It kind of felt like Volume 8 in a way. Like, it was a good beginning, but I think more of the stuff will actually build upon later on. Because at the end of this volume, we're in Milis. Zenith has been kidnapped, and Rudeus also had met the Pope. So, you know, it seems like we're getting somewhere. It's just, this is the first stop before we zoom on in to other parts. So, it's, like I said, it's a good volume. Nothing really great, but also nothing really bad. Now what I want to talk about is the characters. So the first character that I want to get out of the way is Zanobo. Zanobo had his whole volume, so we do know most of the stuff there. But here we kind of just see what's going to happen from now on, now that he's no longer a royal. So what's happened in this volume is that he's graduated from the university. So he no longer is a student, although he himself probably wasn't even there. Or maybe he actually didn't. I kind of don't know. I totally forgot. So, you know, comment down below, usual, like say he actually dropped out. But anyways, the other stuff I do know for certain he is doing now. So now he works for Rudeus on both the magical armor and also on the rigid figures. So, you know, he has some form of income coming in. And also a cool thing that is happening with him is that he has a shop named after him in Ashura. So he's going to be well known in that bit and won't be forgotten. In fact, he might be actually more well known than his actual kingdom. So that's a good thing. It's a really good thing that life is turned around for him after what had tragically happened in the last volume. And just a little bit, he's living with Julia and Ginger now. His only family left, and honestly, I would say Zanobo has a good, happy ending. He's now living the life that he wanted to create figures and to create statues and whatnot, and he gets to live with his friends and family. So honestly, what kind of better life could you ask? Alright, so now that we got Zanobo out of the way, let's talk about Rudeus' children. So right now, Rudeus has 3 children, one from each of his wives. And we're going to go down the list on, you know, some things we learned about each of them. So his oldest child, Lucy, daughter of Sylphie, is 5 years old by the end of this volume. She trains really hard with Eris and also studies really hard with Roxy and her mother. So she has a very packed life for a 5-year-old. But because of this, she actually learns to love Rudeus more because Rudeus actually doesn't force her to train and study hard. She loves to go with her father because Rudeus just pampers her, you know, like every good father does. So that's a good thing that's happening with her and Rudeus, because before she didn't really want to be near Rudeus, but now she really loves spending time with her dad. And also a little cool thing is because she's the oldest, she's a good older sister, and also kind of sees Leo as an younger brother as well. So that's pretty nice, and I do see that as a really positive note. Now we got Rudeus' second oldest daughter, Lara. So Lara's mother is Roxy, and what we've learned here is that she loves spending her time with Zenith, which is honestly pretty cool, you know? Daughter spending time with her grandmother, and it doesn't seem like they do much. She just sits on Zenith's lap and they just do something. Now, I think I kind of do know a bit because I have been watching some videos before I actually got into Mushoku Tensai, and I think because Lara is Roxy's, I think she's actually telepathically communicating with Zenith. So I think that's a pretty amazing thing. You know, she's communicating with her grandmother in a way that no one else could, and it makes her bond a bit stronger too. And at the end of this volume, she's about 2 years old, so she's not at Lucy's level where she's talking and walking. I think she's walking a bit. Don't think she's really actually talking. And she treats Leo as a butler and really likes to ride on his back. In fact, Rudeus even says that sometimes when Eris goes walking with Leo, Leo sometimes has a backpack, which is usually Laura. So yeah, that's something interesting about Laura. And then finally we got Aris, Rudeus' only son and Eris' child. So we don't really know much because, well, he's a baby. At the end, he's 1 year old, and all we know is that he really is a gray rat. He really loves boobs, but really hates men. In fact, every time Rudeus tries to comfort him, he starts crying like crazy. But anybody else, and he's pretty fine. Or I should say, any woman, and he's pretty fine. So, you know, the gray rat blood runs strong with this one. And that's basically all we have on Rudeus' children. Now let's get into Rudeus' siblings. Now, during this volume, we actually do have an intermediate where they celebrate Norn and Aiasha's 15th birthday, so I will get to that later, but well, first we're going to start with Norn, because I think she does have some moments in the beginning. So, Norn is very popular at school. She's mostly seen as a mascot, but is mostly because of the fact that she is a student council president. And also maybe her fan club makes her be seen as this mascot of the school. So that probably may be reasons, but she is very popular at school. A lot of people during her birthday actually gave her gifts, and you know, she's very approachable as a president. Rudeus said that unlike Ariel, who was a very good president in terms of the things that she implemented, Norm is a more approachable one. You know, everyone can go to her, everyone can actually talk to her, which makes her very popular along with everyone. And some interesting fact that I actually learned is that some consider her an intermediate tier in the sword god style. So she's becoming like her father. That's a pretty cool thing that's happening with her. And that's all I have to say about Norn. Now let's get into Aiasha. So recently, Aiasha is the leader of a mercenary group, and we learned that from volume 18. She has many friends from her work and also the shopping district. In fact, with those things combined, she's also as popular as Norm, because during the day of their birthday, they all showed up. Another thing that's kind of weird is that she likes spending time with Ars, and Rudeus is kind of worried that it may be different, like not platonic love, but a different type of love, and he is kind of worried, which honestly, yeah, that is kind of worrisome. That's an aunt and nephew relationship, so that is a questionable thing that probably needs to be nothing more than a platonic relationship. But you know, so far I don't think much of it has happened, so I think we're probably going to be clear in the end. Alright, now we are done with Rudeus' family for now. The next person I want to talk about is Cliff. Now, Cliff has also graduated from the university. Now, I do know this. Rudeus has said he's become a little bit calm and seems to be very understanding of where he lies. He's, I guess, humbled, I should say. He can learn a high level divine magic because he's the grandson of the Pope. And an interesting thing I do like that is pretty cool is that he has a greater relationship with Norn. And I actually can see why. They both come from the same religion, and they both respect their ideals and stuff. So them having a great relationship like that makes sense overall. And we do actually get to see that in this volume. And that's all I have to say really about Cliff. We're probably going to get more later on, but it's a pretty decent start. And actually during this volume, I did start to like him more. So I will say that I'm looking forward to learning more about Cliff. And then finally, we got a really mean person, that is Claire, the mother Zenith and the grandmother of Norn and Rudeus. So, like I said before, Claire is the mother of Zenith, and she is the wife of, I don't know how to say this, it's right here, but I'm just going to call him Carl, because it's the first 4 letters of it. So, she is the wife of Count Carl. Seems like she's very stubborn, and the most thing she thinks of is family lineage and religion. And the first time we meet her, she is really mean. She is like the stereotypical rich person. I can judge you of like who you are connected to and all that, not really who you are as a person. And one thing that we learn clearly is that she does not think highly of Aiasha, especially since she's not even Paul's legitimate daughter, more of an illegitimate daughter. So thinking about like her lineage and stuff, it actually kind of would make sense why she wouldn't think of highly of Aiasha. But another thing that's really interesting is that people didn't want to meet her. Like literally nobody wanted to meet her when she sent a letter to see them. Nobody wanted to go with Rudeus. Rudeus didn't know what the problem was, but everyone else did. And after seeing this, I can actually see why. She's not a likable person at all. And even her daughter says so. And that is all the characters I have to say. I know there's some other characters that we meet, like Geese and Rudeus' aunt, but honestly, I don't think they're really that important right now. These were the characters I think we got more of, and all the other characters, not really so much. So, yeah, that's all I have to say for these characters. Alright, now let's talk about location. So, surprisingly enough, we actually do have some no locations, or I guess I should say 2 new locations and 1 location that we kind of expand upon. Because all this takes place in Mushoku, so, it's not really exploring new territories. But now that I've said that, the first place I want to talk about is Mushoku. Now, Cliff actually had an interesting thing that he said about the city. On the outside, it looks beautiful, but deep in the political aspect of the city, it is very rotten. Which, honestly, I can compare that to something like King's Landing. This city is probably looked at as one of the beautiful cities in all of Westeros. But if you actually look deep inside it, on its political side, people are trying to kill each other, brothers trying to kill brother, father tries to kill son, mothers try to kill daughters, daughters try to, manipulate their fathers. A lot of things happen in King's Landing, and it seems like Mushoku is no stranger to politics, which I'm hoping we get to see more of in the future, because then the story can get really interesting. It is very diverse in terms of races, mostly because of the Great Forest. The Great Forest is not that far. If you remember from Volume 4, it wasn't that long of a distance between the Great Forest and Mushoku City. So, it would actually explain why it's very diverse. You can enter in through 4 different entrances. I don't remember it saying that in Volume 4, or I should say 5, because that's really when we start to explore it. But, if I said that earlier, then, I'm just repeating it. Demons can't enter the Divine District. Now, the Divine District is mostly where church leaders live. And one thing about the Millis faith is that they are very racist to demons. In fact, they're so racist that everyone who's usually not considered human is considered demon. So that's mostly why demons can't enter the Divine District. And also, the Divine District are all houses that look identical. And even someone like the Pope has a house that looks very identical. Now, another thing that we should know about the Divine District is that people who serve the church live here as well. So priests, bishops, I'm guessing they have deacons, all these people that they have all live here in this district. And that's kind of all we have about Milishon. We may get more in the future, but so far this is all I remember from this volume. Now we got 2 locations that are actually in Milishon itself. So the first one that we visit is the House of Latria. So this is the house that Zenith grew up in. It is a large white mansion that can be found in the residential district. So this family, although believes in the same religion, does not work for the religion itself. They work for the kingdom, and in fact, I think the head of the household is the captain of the knights there, so they have, a good connection with the military. Has a large gate with pair of lion statues flanking on each side. And in between the gate and the front door, there is a long cobbled walkway. And also in the middle of it is a nice fountain. And on the outside, the hedges are trimmed into different shapes. So I don't think the inside was explored much, but it's basically your typical rich mansion. Hedges that look totally different and have unique shapes, large gate to keep people out, a fountain in the middle of it just because, and a good walkway from the front door to there. So it's a stereotypical rich mansion, and honestly, nothing can go wrong with that. Then finally we got the capital of the Millis faith. I don't know what it was called, so I'm just calling it here. So the capital of the Millis is a white and silver 4-story building. From afar, Rudeus says it looks like there has a golden ring to it, but when you go inside or get a little bit closer, that golden ring is actually more of a mirage than anything else. And through a bird's eye view, it looked really unique. So it's actually 2 squares, but one of the squares is like diagonal, so it looks like a diamond. So it's a square surrounding a diamond, basically. And the outer square is filled with a lot of the office workers and the, priests that don't really do much. But the inner square is more of where the Pope is. That is more of the sacred ground. So I'm guessing that's more of a temple, really, in that area. And in between the spaces that the diamond and the square don't touch, it has 4 gardens that fill the corners of those spaces. And then unique thing about these spaces is that each one represents a different season. One represents spring, one represents fall, and so on and so forth. And one of them actually has a sakura tree. And for those who don't know, those are the cherry blossoms you see in anime. So, that's pretty cool. It's a really interesting thing to see about this. And that is basically it about these locations. We've gotten some really cool locations, and honestly, I hope in the future we get to learn a little bit more about Milishon and how its political factions are working into it as a whole. All in all, I'm really satisfied with these locations. Alright, now let's talk about iconic moments. So the first iconic moment that I want to talk about is Cliff gets a letter. Now really this is self-explanatory. Cliff gets a letter from his grandfather telling him that he needs to return home and do his duty as a aristocrat in Millis. Now, Cliff is not sure what he should do. Should he actually go or should he stay with his family? Rudeus wants him to go because he's trying to build alliances for Orstrid. So, it would be good to have someone in the Millis faith to actually fight alongside Orstrid when the time comes and all that. And that's basically all in that moment. Now, the reason why I want to put this moment here is because this seems to be the moving factor into what will happen in the next couple of volumes. In the current state Millis is in, it's a very political, like Civil War kind of thing. If you've seen Game of Thrones, it's like the Dance of the Dragons. There's one side that supports one faction, and there's one side that supports another, and all that. It's very dangerous being an aristocrat there, and all that. That's kind of why I want to put this moment here. Next, we got the Wraith incident. So, in the university, one of the students accidentally peeled a seal off of a door, which released a Wraith. And because of this, Norn gets the student council, with the help of Cliff, to get rid of the Wraith. And then after the Wraith, Cliff asks the student council about their future. Some of them want to be merchants, some of them want to go home and actually contribute to their village, and some of them are not pretty sure. And also, Cliff asks Norn why she asked him for help and not Rudeus. Now, I don't really remember the answer, but I'm pretty sure it's more of like Rudeus would have got the attention of it instead of Norn, so that may have been a reason. It also probably was in her mind she didn't want to be a burden to Rudeus. He's doing so much, and this is something that she should at least do on her own, so that makes some sense too, but I'm not really sure what happens. But anyways, that's kind of what happens in this moment. And the reason why I want to put this here is because, well, it's very rare that we get Norn and Cliff moments. They're really good friends, and it's understandable why they would actually become friends. They both come from the same religion and both have the same beliefs that each would actually follow. And also, they're not extremists like other people in the Millis continent. Some of the faith's members in the Millis continent that we learn later on hate demons, and these two actually have like tolerance with other races. So it's really cool having these two become friends. And then next we got Cliff gives his answer to Rudeus. So after Cliff has graduated, he asks Rudeus and Xanabo to go to the roof. Cliff gives his answer to Rudeus about what he's going to do. So first off, he's actually going to wait a year so that Ellie and Elise could actually have help raising their son. And then after a while, when he's grown up, he would then go off to Millis and fulfill his duties as a priest and do his job to become the next heir to the Millis faith. Or in his words, become a real man. And Rudeus actually understands this and accepts this answer. And that's basically it. Now, the reason why I want to actually add this moment is because, well, this is like one of the moments that actually got me to like Cliff. He wasn't the guy he was before who just thought, I could do everything. I don't need to think of the consequences. I'm just that strong and whatnot. He's actually grown and understands that there are some priorities he needs to take. He can't just take his family home because he knows it will actually cause problems for him and his grandfather and also for his family. He also knows that it's important to stay with his family, so he can't just straight up just leave them here. So with this plan in motion, it makes me actually respect the guy more, instead of what he was like when we first met him some time ago. It's been a while since I actually remembered when we met Cliff. Next, we got Norn and Aiasha's 15th birthday. So Rudeus' family throws a party for Aiasha and Norn, because in the tradition of humans, 15 is a really good, or I guess a big year for humans. And everyone gives their gifts together, and everyone tells them about the party they're going to throw. And on the day of their birthday, Norn gets a lot of presents from her fans, and Aiasha gets a feast with her co-workers the next day because they were kind of late and stuff. And honestly, this is just, a good family moment, wholesome, with friends and family together and all that. And the reason why I put this here is because, sometimes we need some happiness. We don't have to always do straightforward stories. Sometimes it's good to take a break once in a while and have some characters go through some, great moments like this. And also here, one of my favorite moments of this, moment is when Rudeus gives Norn the statue of Paul. She cries and cherishes it very well, and it's a really heartwarming moment between brother and sister. Next, we got Aileen and Elise ask Rudeus for a favor. I should actually let you know that there's a lot of time skipping going on in this volume, so if you're kind of confused, that is why. So after Rudeus' graduation, he goes to a bar and celebrate. And then after a while, Aileen takes Rudeus off to talk in private. And the one thing she just asks is to watch over Cliff for the first few years. And the thing is, though, Rudeus wants to do that, but he knows it wouldn't be right for Cliff because he wants to actually try his best to get to where he is on his own merit, which is another part of him being the real man. And I do like this moment because it builds how much Aileen at least loves Cliff. Because even though I don't really like this relationship in terms of how it starts, it's good to see that there is love and it's not just a part of like the story. Aileen at least loves Cliff and wants to make sure she's safe, and the only person she can actually really talk to is Rudeus about it. So it's really good to have this moment. And also, it's just a good moment to have, Aileen, Elise, and Rudeus, besides the pervertedness that was in the beginning. Next, we got Rudeus gets a letter from Millis. So, right after the graduation, and after Aileen asks Rudeus for a favor, Rudeus goes home, and Aiasha gives him a letter. The letter turns out to be from his grandmother. Not from Paul's side, but from Zenith's side. And the letter asks for Zenith to come to Millis. Also, the fact that Norn and Aiasha are allowed to come. Norn doesn't want to go because she's in her final year of school. But even then, she doesn't want to go anyways to meet her. And Aiasha tries to come up with a good excuse, but fails. And it is also here that we learn that she is afraid of the woman. And we actually kind of do understand that earlier on. So it is understandable why she wouldn't want to come to see her again. Now, to get Aiasha on board, Rudeus says she doesn't have to meet her, just as long as she'd worry about the other stuff, like handling with Zenith and whatnot. And also Lilith would be going as well, because she has been taking care of Zenith for a long time. But it's also here that we learn a surprise twist, because of course this happens. Sylphie is pregnant, and Rudeus tries to think of ways for him to have help with his mother, but also with his wife. Because his other two wives are going to be there, but, they're going to need to have more than just help. Roxy has a job, and Eris trains? I honestly don't know what she actually really does. I wasn't really paying attention about that. So it kind of is a big thing happening, like what's going to happen now. But then Zenith goes, and this is a really cool moment, or a really amazing moment, in my opinion. Zenith goes over to Sylphie and kind of, gives a signal saying, take care of her. She has my grandchild. She needs priority over me. And Lilith, knowing her for a long time, realizes, okay, I'll take care of her. And it's there she actually puts Aiasha in charge of Zenith. And I really do like this moment because not only just the Zenith moment, but also it kind of moves the story along to like a big goal, but also like a big shock to realize that, Rudeus is actually going to meet his grandmother, someone he's never heard of or that he's never even met before. He's met his aunt in volume 4, I remember that, but he's never met the mother of his mother. So it's a really interesting thing to see, and also gives Rudeus an excuse to go to Millis, because that's where she is, and Cliff, so, a lot of positives here. So next, what we got is meeting Claire. So Rudeus, Zenith, and Aiasha go to see Claire. Now, what we learned from Claire is that she's very old-timey, so she has a lot of things she expects of people. She expects things to be a certain way. She grew up in a way that she feels is the normal. And so when they first meet Claire, she doesn't like Aiasha and doesn't acknowledge Rudeus at all. So she's kind of rude. She goes to Aiasha being like, you can't be sitting down when your master is standing up. You can't be doing this. She's very strict and all that. Eventually, after that thing, Rudeus and her start talking. Mostly, Rudeus is not agreeing with most of the stuff she's saying, like how Aiasha is beneath him, and also, she's not really family and whatnot. Just basically bringing Aiasha down. And also, while they're talking, Claire tells Rudeus to cut ties with Cliff, because in this political faction, they are actually against Cliff's family. Of course, Rudeus refuses because he would never do that to a friend, and that kind of angers Claire. And then Claire then tells her that they can leave and all that, but Zenith must stay. And she gives her reasons like why Zenith must stay. She will eventually have more children. She'll marry off to another family. She'll, do her duty to her family. And Rudeus just gets mad and is like, you know what, screw this. I'ma just get out. I wanted to meet you and I can see why people dislike you. So I'm going out. And honestly, this is a really interesting interaction because we eventually get to see what kind of household Zenith lived up in. She lived in a very strict household with her mother, and especially since they are in politics, I could see why she would be raised in a strict household, especially with a mother like her. And also, it kind of puts in a mindset of what Zenith was going through, and probably a reason why she never actually spoke to, or why we never actually met this other family, because she had a hard time with them, that she would never want to actually experience that with her son or even her daughter and whatnot. So it's really interesting seeing, the other side of Rudeus's family. And then finally we got the Pope sees Rudeus. Now this is the final moment I want to talk about because I know there's a big moment at the end, but honestly I think this one is a good moment to end up on. So Cliff brings Rudeus to see the Pope. They introduce each other, and then the Pope brings up everything that he's learned about Rudeus. So, like the feats he's done, the people he's supported, or the people that supports him, the titles he's won, and all that. So, the Pope has, good connections on, everything. And after the Pope tells him what he knows, Rudeus kind of corrects him, saying, yeah, some of the stuff is true. And also, he brings up Roxy saying, she's my master and whatnot, and that's understandable. But he also asks for some favors after their introduction. So, Rudeus asks about the superb figures, the one to help benefit Richard's people and his reputation, and also the mercenary branch. And the Pope agrees to the mercenary branch. So, Rudeus has a foothold in the mercenary place, but does not accept the superb figures. Because they are in a political war, there are some people that don't want to actually deal with demons. So he has to play favors in order to make sure that, his side wins in the political spectrum. And also in this interaction, the Pope asks Rudeus if he will help Cliff with his politics and whatnot. But Rudeus eventually just says, I'm here for the mercenary branch, and I'm not here helping Cliff. And in some ways that is true. He wasn't here to actually watch over Cliff, he was actually here for the mercenary branch, so he has a footing there, but also his grandmother. So, in a way, he's not telling a lie. And I really do like this moment because it kind of shows the power of the Pope, where he was able to know everything about Rudeus, although some of them were, wrong. But also the fact that you can see the state of the country as a whole. The Pope accepts the mercenary branch. He just sees it as, another faction being here and could see more allies coming here in the far future. But he knows that, he can't just accept everything because he also needs to get the allies here. And he can't just allow demon figures to be sold everywhere if some people don't want to side with a group that helps support demons. And yeah, that's really what I liked about these moments. And that is basically it for the moments that I have. There are some moments I left out, like meeting up with Geese, and also Rudeus meeting up with his auntie again, and also the end where Zenith goes missing. But honestly, I think these moments were probably really good, and I think were a lot more interesting to talk about, in my opinion. Alright, now let's end this video. So if I were to rank this volume, honestly I would rank it a B. there wasn't really a big issue in my opinion. The stories were great and there was a lot of great moments into it. Although I will say there wasn't really a thing to look forward to. Or I guess there was, it's just the whole volume wasn't towards that moment. There was a lot of time skips and stuff, and we just got to see a lot of family moments and just, happy moments and all that, but it never felt like the previous volume where every event just constantly happened. It just seemed like, okay, this is what's happening now. Then a couple of years later, this is what's happening now. It's not like a constant flow, in my opinion. Now, it's not really bad because the moments were great and all that. We got the birthday of Aiasha and Norn. We got the realization that Rudeus has a grandmother that's actually in Millis, or the fact that she's even alive. There's many great moments into it. However, it never really played as if it was built up to this. It just felt like, okay, we got this moment here, and then, wait a couple of years. Okay, another moment. A couple of years later, another moment, and all that stuff. Where you did eventually get there at the end, but still, the whole volume just felt like a whole bunch of time skips and just all that. Not bad, but, not something I would say is my favorite volume in my eyes. Hopefully we do get another one in volume 21, but, I haven't read it yet, so that's all I'm just hoping for. Alright, and that is the end of this video. If you really enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this. And come back next time as I talk about volume 21. Zenith has gone missing and Rudeus is now looking for his mother. And as always, I am the Anime Bro. Have a wonderful day, and see you guys later. Peace!